Welcome, everyone. And Mark, how are you doing?
Oh, good. It's wonderful to be with you again.
Yes, likewise. It's been some time since we produced the video book. But yeah, j just waiting for a couple of moments to let everyone join. And everyone in the chat, can you let us know where you're joining us from? Mark, how about you? Where are you calling in
I
from?
am from a home in Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan. There is a Kalamazoo.
Wow, wonderful. And how's the weather out there in the summer?
Oh, it's been it's pretty good today, but it's been, as you know, humid and very unusually hot. So a little hard to find the right time to walk our dog.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been just heat wave after heat wave here in New York City. So fully hear that. And I think we can get started. Looks like we have a lot of folks that have joined. Hello again to our audience. I'm Ronak Shet, the CEO and founder here at LIT Videobooks. If you're not familiar with LIT, we make learning from best-selling business books as fun and entertaining as watching a movie or a documentary. Mark, thanks so much for being here. It was a huge pleasure to collaborate with you on the video book, and I'm excited to dive in today to what I think it will be, really exciting conversation about the Book of Awakening and how we can embrace heartfulness and clarity this summer. So, for those of you who aren't sure what our summer reset is all about, it's a light touch, summer schedule friendly type of way to help us kind of reflect, reset, and rethink how we show up in work and life. And each month this summer, we're featuring one video book and its author, and with a focus on themes like finding meaning and fulfillment, embracing heartfulness and clarity, and how we can expand our capacity to learn and grow just in time for back to school. So we're also going to save the last 15 minutes or so for a Q&A with Mark. And so please ask your questions in the Slido link that's in the chat and upvote anything you want to make sure is answered. Now, before we dive in, I want to share a bit about Mark with everyone here. So, Mark Nepo is a poet, teacher, storyteller, and best-selling author whose work has touched millions around the world. His book, The Book of Awakening, became a number one New York Times bestseller and has sold over 1 million copies, and is just one of the 27 books he's published alongside 19 audio projects. His work is widely accessible, and his books have been translated into more than 20 languages. So please join me as we welcome Mark. Mark, would you mind sharing what you are working on at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So actually, my latest book just came out last week, and it's called The Fifth Season: Creativity in the Second Half of Life. And that's through my wonderful publisher, St. Martin's Essentials. So and I've been working on some other books as well, preparing them. It's amazing as I get older, as long as I get out of the way, they just keep coming.
That's incredible, and uh, I have to check that one out and read that. And so, I guess, Mark, before we begin, today's topic is heartfulness and clarity. Are you able
Yeah.
to share a little bit more about these inner qualities as we begin the conversation?
Sure, sure. So as I speak and as you know from our work, what I share are examples, not instructions. We're just really comparing notes on what it is to be alive here. And so as I think of heartfulness, I think that is the openness that allows us to live life and not watch it. It works with our mind, just as we have, two good legs, we need two to walk. We need both mindfulness and heartfulness, and they inform each other. And so I think that the heart is the inlet between the inner world and the outer world, between ourself and each other, between, we're a living part in a living whole, and the heart is that inlet there. And so, I think our heart also, at least in my experience, is our strongest and most sensitive instrument. So how do we stay heartful? Well, by being real, by being authentic and thorough. So these are never-ending practices like breathing, that we just always have to return to. So I would offer, here's a metaphor to think about it. If the heart is our instrument, then clarity is how we focus it. So think of like a microscope or a telescope. That's the instrument, but you need to turn that little knob to calibrate the lens into focus. So our heart is the instrument, both inwardly and outwardly, and even how we listen to each other in true friendship. But clarity is how we turn that lens uh, into focus. It's clarity is also the ongoing practice, how we keep removing what's in the way again and again. So let me share a poem, a short poem of mine that really speaks about heartfulness and clarity. It's called Mind as Keyhole. Beneath the cloud, everything is gray. Above the cloud, everything is light. Calling the cloud unfair is being a victim. Trying to conquer the cloud is being a hero. Calling the cloud a cloud is the beginning of peace.
I mean, there's so much to discuss just about the poem. It was a wonderful poem. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, sure, you're welcome.
And to start, we wanted to share a short clip from the video book and hear a story about how a trip on the coast of California taught you an important life lesson. So I'm going to queue up and pull up this clip right here.
I was teaching out on the West Coast, and I had never made the drive along that beautiful coastline. So I rented a car, and I took a week afterwards, and I drove down and flew back from LA. At the very beginning of that journey, I started to see these amazing little outcropping, these little stone islands that jut up. And it was a kind of a windy, rough day, and I stopped around Monterey. On one of these outcroppings, the entire visible stone was covered with sea life. Otters, sea lions, pelicans, cormorants, you name it. And there was no space. They were literally sleeping on each other. And I watched this for quite a while as the rough water was bashing around the stone island. And it realized a deep lesson showed itself. And normally these sea creatures would be territorial. They wouldn't even get that close. But the water was so rough that they were exhausted of their differences. And once they were exhausted of their differences, there was room enough for everyone. And this was a profound lesson. Today we experience a lot of polarity, a lot of stridency, a lot of territorialism. But the truth is, when exhausted of our differences, there's plenty of room for everybody.
The bird rock is something that all humans experience. We all seek refuge on our own unique rocks.
Immediately when I was there, I thought of the cancer rooms I was in, the support groups I was in. I thought of, all of the 12-step programs and the, Narcotics Anonymous and Weight Watchers Anonymous and every kind of group, formal or informal, song is, the mosques, just community groups, even groups of friends. These are little islands in the storm that we gather when the water's rough and they throw us up there. And in the Native American worldview, everything in existence is part of one family.
When we can exist together and love one another, we can remind each other that simply being human is a gift.
Really a beautiful metaphor and reminder.
Well, beautiful how, the magic of how you've done that with the video book is really amazing.
Thank you. And the gift of being human, I guess, can get lost, with the exhaustion of that rough sea, right? And I think we all feel that, maybe sometimes every day, in one aspect of life or another. How do we start to kind of find our own bird rocks or communities and kind of cultivate our own calm, in the rough
Yeah.
sea of the world?
Well, I know for me, some of the things that I return to are, and the first is being present, and keep returning to being present, which means being open-hearted, holding nothing back, opening after closing. These are things we're not going to, where we will hold things back, we will not be present, we'll close just because we're human. But the practice is, when I'm closed, I need to open. When I'm holding something with withholding, I need to hold nothing back. I need to be present and return to it. And so I think, especially when we're struggling, um, I think the first powerful thing we can do when feeling powerless is to admit what is true. Often I don't want to be sad, so I don't admit that I already am. And now there's a tension inside, or I don't want things to change, so I don't admit that they already have. So we're always trying to stay wholehearted, and I can't be wholehearted all the time, but I'm committed to returning to being wholehearted. And I think one of the things that is become a practice, especially in the last year, I'm doing really well now, but last September I had fusion back surgery. And so there were several months before that and through the recovery that I was in a really chronic pain. And it was probably the most difficult thing since my cancer journey many years ago. And I kept needing to give my full attention to the nearest life before me until it became my teacher. It could be a fly on the window. And this is not something I'm coming up with. All the traditions speak about, giving our full attention releases the sacredness that's waiting in everything. Um, and that is it's not just a wonderful like worldview, that gives us resources. And in the Hindu tradition, there's a term, upa guru, which means the teacher that is next to you at this moment. And there's always a teacher next to you, so we don't have to worry if we miss one. There's one right behind it.
Well, hopefully you're feeling better after the
Oh,
surgery now.
much better. Thank you. No, I'm much better. Back is better than it's ever been.
And I guess maybe diving a little bit deeper on what you're talking about in terms of being present and seeming kind of like what those animals were doing on that rock, right? Um,
Yeah.
why do you think that's so difficult for us today, and with everything that's kind of happening in our culture?
Well, yeah, and there's so much there. Now let me just speak to a few things, and I don't understand it all, but I feel like one is our isolation that's been increased by the modern techno world. And of course, COVID isolated us, and then we were further isolated. And what this has done is removed our direct connection to life. Look at not to pick on any one show or anything, but reality TV culture. You know, it it invites us to give a facsimile of being connected, but not really. I could watch whatever, American Idol or whatever you might call The Voice, any of these. And, I put all my relational energy, I can even vote, but I don't get real relationship and connection for it. And as soon as I turn the TV off, I've exhausted my relational energy and I'm still alone. So it really begs us to get out of the house, to make real contact. Rilke, the great poet Rainer Maria Rilke, he has this wonderful line. And this is way before any kind of cell phones or iPads, right? He said, "I am alone, but not alone enough to make every moment holy. I'm alone, but not alone enough to make every moment holy." And certainly, technology is, look what we're doing here. It does work and it helps, but it helps us to be together in real time. The also the insulation of fear starts to make us want to confirm only what we already know, and then we stop growing. So we're always, if we restore our direct connection with life, you know, um, we always return to how rare it is to be here at all. So we're always living, I mean, and this has been forever, but it's much more acute because of the speed of the modern age. But we're always living between the speed of the world and the pace of the soul. The speed of the world and the pace of the soul. And, you know, um, I don't want to give up technology, but I need for us to be connected so that technology stays a tool. If we're not connected, all of a sudden, like water filling a hole, the traits of technology start to become my default values just because they're there. And there's nothing, you know, but I don't want to give up like a power screwdriver over a hand one. I don't want to give up the internet or, look at how we can be together right now. This is wonderful. But that has to do with our staying connected and never mistaking this for being together in person.
Absolutely. And maybe just to dig even deeper into that. So, do you have any advice for some of the people in the audience on, now teams are becoming global, they're becoming hybrid or remote. How do you cultivate real connection in very kind of mixed types of workforces? And any guidance?
Yeah, yeah, and I just from my own experience, of course, during COVID, I mean, I've been on Zoom a lot being interviewed, but I didn't offer any webinars until COVID, like so many people. So I've learned a great deal about this, and I think that while direct uh, and meaningful connection can happen, there's a gift of Zoom, and the presence of synergy can only happen in person. So let me give you kind of an example each way. So, the gift of how meaningful contact can happen through Zoom is, people from all over the world can suddenly be together. And I was during COVID, I had the wonderful opportunity to work with a large group from China, something like 500 students, and we had over the course of 6 weeks, 5 2-hour sessions, and so much depended on this amazing translator because I don't speak Chinese, and but I had people journaling, so I saw all those little thumbnails of all these 500 people, and as they were journaling, I just like like a little shine on a jewel, I stumbled on one, and somewhere in the middle of China there was a woman, I'm guessing in her 30s, who was journaling at a kitchen table, probably in an apartment. And behind her was an older woman while she was journaling, combing her hair. And I don't know, but I imagined it was her mother. And all of a sudden, that wasn't just a thumbnail. Here I am in Kalamazoo, Michigan, in my study with my dog. And halfway around the world, I had the privilege of it was a window into a whole life. So this is the wonder of technology. Okay. Um, Now the other side, and for this, let's take, I'll go back and say that, when I grew up, my father never traveled. We never went anywhere, other than to work and back. He did. And so we subscribed to National Geographic because he loved to look at the pictures, right? And so now, right, I can go on YouTube and I can find a clip of somebody climbing Mount Everest and I'm literally looking over their shoulder. Well, that's wonderful because I'm never going to climb Mount Everest. But the challenge of not being directly connected to life is that many of us then mistake that we made the climb. I didn't make the climb. I had the privilege of watching someone make the climb. And so much of the experience through the internet, through Facebook, through social media, um, gives people the illusion that they've experienced something when they haven't. And when we don't, our life shrinks, our wholeheartedness shrinks, and now we limit our access to what's real, and we're out of focus. So, both of these, and so this also speaks. So I would say that for organizations and, any sustained conversations and practices that can renew our direct connection to life will cultivate meaningful relationships at work, at home, in the world. And any, I think, conversations or practices that will let people be seen as more than just their role, that will let them contribute the gift of who they are in addition to what they're asked to do. I think that these are very important practices to reduce isolation and violence in the world. And the last thing I would share about this is, I know there's an epidemic of loneliness, um, and I think that, what comes up is during my cancer journey many years ago, you don't interview ambulance drivers, you take the first one that comes along. And I say that because if you're lonely, get out of the house, say hello. You know, even if you never talk, instead of reading at home alone, read in a cafe. Even if you never say something to anyone, you're around life and other people, and it starts to break down the wall between your solitude and being with others.
It's really interesting and really great advice, and sort of perfect for summertime, right? Try something new, get outdoors. And one thing you mention in the book a lot is you talk about pain in a very interesting way. And later on in the video book, you mentioned that pain carves us into our deeper selves. So let's start with this right after we play this clip.
Misery can become so overpowering that it can overtake us and become everything we see.
Say I'm climbing a mountain. My friends told me the top of this mountain is a magnificent view. I can't wait to get there, and it's a beautiful day. And just as I'm getting toward the top of the mountain, I'm so eager, I stop looking where I'm going and I stub my toe on this boulder. I mean, stub it like when you think you might have broken your toe, right? And in that moment, because that's how pain says hello, forget the beautiful day, forget the view. In that moment, the only thing I know is that pain in my toe is through my whole being, my whole body. And then after a while, maybe 10, 15 minutes, it's hurting and it's throbbing, but it's no longer everywhere. Now I've remembered I'm on the mountain. The view is still beautiful. I'm approaching the summit. And that's the choice point we're always at. Between the pain in my toe, the miracle is still there. The view has not gone anywhere. Now I have a choice. Misery is when the moment of pain, fear, or worry stays everything longer than is naturally appropriate. We have to negotiate our pain and not miss the miracle of the view or the beauty of the day.
You really do speak about pain in a very interesting way. And I guess the difference between pain and misery, how do we begin to trust pain rather than resist it? And also, how do we kind of avoid getting into a place where pain becomes misery?
Yeah, so this opens a constellation of a couple of things. And first, I would say that we're challenged. Pain and fear say hello by tightening us up. And then our job is to keep opening, widening, and deepening where we stand, what we see, and what we let in. So, and continuing to let the experience unfold because misery, as I was exploring there, misery and terror are when we get stuck in a moment of fear and pain and we don't let it unfold. And my first real example of this was during my cancer journey. And everyone who's been through anything life-threatening or deep, involved medically, there's always something that hooks you. It's different for everybody, and for me it was getting a bone marrow sampling. So I say this because if you are facing a bone marrow, it doesn't mean it's going to be difficult for you. It was for me. Okay. Sometimes it's getting, blood drawn, or it could be many things for many people, but usually we're hooked by something. So this was for me. It was really unpleasant. I didn't want to do it. I had to do it often. And I was getting like stuck. It became, because of fear and the pain of it, it became like huge. And then somehow, I don't know how, maybe because I was exhausted and finally open to thinking differently. Um, I realized, and this is clarity, seeing things as they are, that as distasteful as it was, the actual procedure lasted 30, the actual that they took the marrow out was 30 seconds. And there was life on the other side of those 30 seconds. So now that gave me a way to unfold, to widen, deepen what I saw, what I let in, where I was standing. So I still didn't like it. I still didn't want to do it. But, I could see uh, my way to the other side of it. So let me share a story that's very, very um, helpful and ancient and just amazing. These ancient anonymous teaching stories. This is a Hindu teaching story. And in this story, there's a master and an apprentice, always. And in this story, the master finds his apprentice very annoying because all he does is complain, complain, complain. So he says, I want you to get a handful of salt, put it in a glass of water, and bring it to me quietly. Apprentice does it. He says, drink. He drinks. He spits it out. The master says, what's the matter? He says, it's bitter. Master says, okay, I want you to get the same amount of salt and cup it in your hands and follow me quietly. So he does. He follows the master, who leads him to a lake. The master says, put the salt in the lake. He does. He says, drink. So the apprentice kneels down. He scoops some water. It's dribbling down his chin. The master says, well, and he says, oh, it's wonderful. It's fresh. The master looks at the apprentice and says, stop being a glass, become a lake. Stop being a glass, become a lake. And this story, this ancient anonymous teaching story, tells us how we can begin to work with pain and fear. And we can't remove it or eliminate it, but we can right size it by enlarging our sense of things. So you may hear the story and say, well, I'm not going to be a glass. That's no good. Well, yes, you will, and I will too, because that's how pain and fear say hello. Okay. And then our job is to expand our sense of things. So the question, the practice question of heartfulness and clarity is, what experiences, what practices, what relationships help you enlarge your sense of things so that you have these things in a toolbox, a spiritual toolbox, so that the next time fear and pain say hello, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. And when you first feel that, you're not going to think of the toolbox. But then after a while, you'll go, okay, I recognize this. What can I turn to? What can I turn to?
That's really insightful and helpful. And for you, are there specific things that you utilize when you're dealing with pain and fear personally?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's my own. So these kind of practices that I'm mentioning, we all have to personalize them. So for me, one thing I try to do, and I did this with my back surgery. I had this chronic pain, which I'd never, and my God, for people who can't find a way out, oh, my heart goes out to folks. Well, so when I was sitting right in this chair in my study and I was in pain, I couldn't deny my pain, but I also had to say, okay, I have to feel the place nearest me that's not in pain, that's not afraid, even the floor under me, or the ceiling above me, or the sky above the house, or the ground beneath the floor of the house. Everything, even though we feel it when we're afraid and in pain, everything isn't afraid or in pain, and thank God, because then there's something we can stand on. So, and then I did try to give my heart's attention to whatever was before me. There were, trees outside this window that became teachers for me, and how they let the wind through. And I had to learn how to let the pain go through, not to grip it, not even though it gripped me, how to let it go, how to let it go. So I think that, and so another thing, this is another metaphor that I would offer for what I would call functional faith, not faith that's in a person or a doctrine or a tradition. So functional faith is a belief in life, even though things are difficult. So we've all been at a lake or a pond, and most of the time the wind, even if it's a gentle breeze, is disturbing the surface. And once in a while it will get still and you can see the bottom. Well, the bottom doesn't go anywhere. It's always there. And so we can wait for the wind to still, or we can still the waters in ourselves, which is what all the meditation traditions are about, what authenticity is about, what patience is about, that what great love and great suffering still the waters so that we can see through our pain and our fear to everything that's not afraid or in pain. And so that is the faith that the bottom hasn't gone anywhere just because today I can't see it.
One of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier in the clip is that negotiate with the pain so we don't have to miss the miracle of the view. Uh, I guess what gives you meaning right now in your work, in your relationships, and in your inner life?
Yeah, well, it's really, uh, living with an open heart in all directions. The sun is a great teacher because it emanates light and warmth in all directions without preference. It doesn't say, oh, today I'm going to shine on the roses. No. And so I feel like a lifetime practice that I try to practice, even though I may stumble, uh, living like that with an open heart in all directions, even though I will get afraid and I will have fear and I'll be confused and I'll be misunderstood and I'll misunderstand others. And so for me, this plays out, I have no bucket list, no 5-year plan, I mean, I just feel blessed to continue, and I say retrieve because I think writing has become listening and taking notes. I try to retrieve the poems and books that keep coming through. I so love being in the teaching space with others and just being with loved ones and friends because I really feel when we live with an open heart, um, that heaven is here in each moment when we can hold nothing back and fully give and receive. And that appears for everyone differently. It could be gardening, it could be, hosting friends for dinner, it could be stamp collecting, and anything that you give your full heart to.
Thanks again for sharing all this with us. I want to go ahead and take a look at one final clip from the video book about a very important way to lead a more authentic life.
Just as we must embrace life in its totality, we must learn to love ourselves completely.
Without loving ourselves, we often love poorly. That is, without learning how to value and find our own worth, we often, meaning well, will love others the way we'd like to be loved and not give what's needed.
Loving ourselves is not a selfish act.
Loving ourselves clears our lens, cleans our window. We learn to open our eyes, but if we don't look or see once we open our eyes, what's the point? And we also learn to open our heart, but if we don't love and care once we open our heart, what's the point? Another way to say loving ourselves is knowing our self-worth. But knowing your own worth, which is also the work of awakening, allows us to have strong roots and be able to bear fruit in the world.
Without self-love, we are trapped on an endless road filled with dependency and sacrifice. There is a false premise that we must choose between loving ourselves and loving others.
I think that human beings, when afraid and feeling small, and when their windows are not clear, we make this distinction that we think self-interest will save us, when the only thing that really saves us is loving each other. So we think we have to choose. We can be inspired by others, but it only mirrors to us our own possibility.
So self-love and self-worth. I imagine a lot of the folks in the audience are not accustomed to talking about this in a day-to-day meeting or presentation at work. But are there simple daily practices you suggest around these two ideas and
Yeah,
topics?
yeah, very much so, because we're always living between self-love and the love of others. And where is the corridor of aliveness between them? And so, I would, so let me share some well, first let me share a metaphor and then these practices that I think will help clear. And the metaphor is one of an acequia. So it really started in the Middle East, but is also in the Southwest. And a sequia is a natural, a little groove or stream of water from like the top of a mountain to the bottom of the mountain, where snow will melt and it will go down there. So an acequia, a lot of Native American communities would settle at the bottom of an acequia because there's a water source. And this is the point, the metaphor, that once a year or twice, the entire village, including elders and children, would have a ritual, community ritual of going up and clearing out the acequia, anything that through the winter has blocked the flow of water from the source, whether that be fallen limbs, stones, bird nests, rodents, so that nothing is blocking. And what's blocked the flow is just erosion experience. So the metaphor is for us, we have to keep clearing the acequia between life and us, which goes through our heart. So this is why we need to do these practices of stillness and journaling and reflection and authenticity to keep clearing out the stream between the source of all life that goes through our life and our soul and our heart and our life experience and our world. So here are a couple of very just suggestions, practical, spiritually practical suggestions. So I would offer, begin a conversation with life and your true self 5 minutes a day. Journal. Get a journal that is welcoming, get a special pen, however you like it. Like brushing your teeth, you don't think about it. But to start the practice, so do it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes will become 10. But just 5 minutes when it's a good, whether even the beginning of the day, middle, or at the end, just take 5 minutes, go to your journal, and just stay in conversation with what's coming from your heart. So I would also, in this respect, begin a practice every day for 5 minutes a day, a practice of listening without an agenda. Just be still, whether it's outside, inside, in a cafe, in nature. Just listen. and record what you hear in your journal with no conclusions, with no agenda, with no looking to make it pretty or insightful. Just listen. And the third way that I would encourage you to be in conversation, and this would be once a week, begin an inner conversation about the things, the terrain that we're exploring here this hour, with a trusted friend or loved one about your journey through life and theirs. Just once a week for a half hour. Could be in person. It'd be ideal to be in person, but on Zoom, on phone, however, FaceTime. So I would offer that all three of these stay concerned with what is true rather than what is excellent or great, all right, or not great. Stay concerned with insight and not conclusion. So again, begin a 5 minute a day journaling practice in which you're in conversation with life and your true self. Begin a 5 minute a day journaling practice of just listening without any agenda or conclusions, just record what you hear. And I begin a once a week practice for a half hour of just beginning an inner conversation about your journey through life and a dear friend or trusted loved one's journey. And again, it doesn't have to go anywhere. It doesn't have to have conclusions. And so here's a journal question to start, just a jump start, your conversation and your journaling, your conversation with a friend and your journaling. Can you describe one quality or trait you were born with that no one gave you and which no one can take away? It could be your smile. It could be the way you listen. It doesn't have to be huge or monumental, but all of this to invite you to get more intimate with your true nature. Can you describe one quality or trait that you were born with that no one gave you and no one can take away?
I'm definitely going to do that today. Um, how do we know if our self-love is present and working? Is there a question we should be asking ourselves more often to know that we are?
So I would offer that we know that our true self is present when we feel more alive and safe in our journey. The word friendship, the root of the word friendship means place of high safety. And that applies to our place in the world. And I know in a world that's pretty unsafe and pretty scary right now, it's all the more reason that we have to find, the place of high safety. Even under all of the discovery of the atomic bomb, Einstein concluded at the end of his life, he said, the universe is a friendly place. And so I think, how do we don't ignore the difficulties that are on the surface, but to meet them, we have to find that safe and alive place in us. So we know, to trust, to keep trusting that feeling of aliveness. Trust means follow your heart. That's what the word means. So I think a barometer or a way, an indicator that we are on the right track in our authenticity is, are we following what is life-giving and heartening and not following what is life-draining and disheartening? So if something is life-giving and heartening, even if it's difficult, well, then I'm all in. But if it's life-draining and disheartening, what am I doing there? So I guess one question that I think we can keep in conversation with is, what are my gifts and what is in the way of my being kind and useful? What are my gifts and what is in the way of my being kind and useful?
Well, this has been so insightful, Mark. Thank you. Um, Wanted to switch over to answer some questions from our attendees, if that's okay.
Sure.
So the first one here, this is a challenging one. Uh, do you believe we all have a purpose, or is it more about presence than purpose?
Yeah, so I believe that our purpose is simply to be as is the heart's aliveness. You know, flowers' purpose is to reveal their inner beauty by turning inside out and blossoming. So too we. So I think our purpose is to be as alive as possible, and that is the discovery of our gifts. And where we use them is our soul's calling. So I may have a gift that to help. My gift is to help things grow. Well, am I helping plants grow? Am I helping children grow? Am I helping people heal? How am I a teacher? Am I a nurse? There's a lot of ways I can help things grow, but I need to awaken and be intimate with that, let that gift be my teacher, and then see where I can use it in the world. So I think our presence is our way to our purpose by being present. And I think that the soul wants the heart to be as alive as possible. So, like, a fire doesn't really care what kind of wood you put on it to keep the flame burning. And I think the soul just wants care put on it. And it really doesn't matter what you care about. And presence leads us to what we care about. And then the expression of that care becomes our purpose.
What books have you read that have had the largest impact on you and your life?
Oh, so I'll share a couple, but I actually wrote a chapter in one of my books. I think it was, um, I think it's Falling Down and Getting Up. There's a section in there about the 12 books that have really shaped me. But let me mention a few. One is the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which you haven't read, I highly encourage. It's a very profound short novel. Another is Carl Jung's autobiography, Memory, Dreams, Reflections, which is an inner biography. He said it was actually dictated to one of his students, and who was a therapist herself, because he said, I don't. He was in his 80s, and he said, I don't want to write like just the chronology of events. He says, but I'm happy to talk about my inner life, the memories, the dreams, the reflections, and the constellations they presented, and that really empowered me. Another is uh, Helen Luke, who was a Jungian analyst, and she wrote a book about the 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 journey of transformation, the metaphors in Dante's Divine Comedy, which is really profound, and it's called Dark Wood to White Rose. Dark Wood to White Rose, and you can easily find that. So those are, and the poems of Pablo Neruda and Rainer Maria Rilke have been great, great teachers for me. So those are a few.
Thank you for the recommendations. And a few other questions here. One of them is I often feel lonely for not having a significant other. How do I overcome this?
No, that, and of course I have no answer, but let me speak to it, and thank you for asking it. I think that there is no overcome that even when we are with partners, no one escapes there is a inherent loneliness to being here. Um, and I think that, I've written in the Book of Awakening that, the flower doesn't dream of the bee, it blossoms and the bee comes. And I think when we are lonely, and I think that um, have to accept and admit that and share what we can where we can. I don't, and we can't, I know in my life when I've been alone and lonely, and I've been, very at home with my aloneness, but that doesn't prevent, there are also times when I feel lonely too, even though I'm very happy in my marriage and I have a great circle of friends. I just think that, there is uh, there's a quality, especially the deeper we go. It's a paradox because the more whole we are in with life, we also are alone in certain ways. And so I don't know that we can ever rid ourselves, but I think that I just encourage to be as honest about, which you are with asking this question, about that loneliness and continue to let as much of life in as possible. Um, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing the suggestion there. And another question we have here. I love the idea of awakening. How do we know when we've actually had an awakening and it's not just a transient illusion?
Yeah, so I think this is especially, uh, you know, how should I say, made more acute in this modern age where truth is under question and, there are facts. If I put my hand in water, I know it's wet. I don't need you to tell me it's wet. And so I think we have to build our trust in our direct experience. When you're in pain, physical pain, no one has to tell you you're in pain. When you're afraid, when you see wonder and beauty, you know you're in the presence of beauty. So I think what's important is to use our own life as a case study and pay attention to, well, what does it feel like when I'm in the presence of beauty? What does it feel like when I'm in the presence of heart pain or mental pain? I don't, so that I can start to become familiar with the characteristics of my direct experience. I don't need you to verify. I might need to share it with you, but I don't need you to validate what I'm experiencing. I need to become a student of my own experience. And so, the story of Hamlet is a great cautionary tale about someone, a very sensitive, talented young man who is traumatized because his father is murdered by his uncle and his mother. There's a lifetime of therapy. And he is traumatized into questioning everything he experiences till he doesn't even know if he's here. And that's the famous, like, to be or not to be. Am I even here? Can I even trust that? And I think Shakespeare is offering this very poignant and powerful cautionary tale. Trust your experience. Share your experience. Ask other people, what's it like to be you? What's it like to be me? This I know is real. I don't understand it. I'm not sure what it means, but I know it's real. So I just encourage to trust our feelings and to go deeper into them.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Mark. And it's really been a pleasure today to go through so many interesting topics and ideas, and for us to kind of take these back and now hopefully use some more of the summer to kind of reflect and reset using a lot of these, just pieces of wisdom and guidance. So thank you. And before everyone goes, just some housekeeping items. Just check out your Zoom confirmation email. You will have received a copy of the Book of Awakening in there. And we also send over the recording of this conversation to all registrants. So just keep an eye out for that. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube and Spotify. And our next fireside chat is with Dr. Joe Bowler and the author of Limitless Mind. So keep an eye out for that. And finally, Mark, I know you offer year-long courses, so if you'd like to share that in a couple of words, that would be great. And we will also send over details to our audience in the follow-up email.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So about 15 years or so ago, I started year-long journeys for a small group that like 16 people. And what we do is we meet 4 weekends over a year in Michigan, where I live. And we go through a year together in this kind of space, deep space. And I started that because I miss journeying with people over time. So the links that you'll get, and thank you for sharing them, will have all the details, and they're open for next year because it takes time to plan if you want to join something like this. That would start next spring. So thanks so much for that. Yeah.
It sounds wonderful. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
And thank you, Ronak. It's great, great. And thanks to everyone for making this possible.